everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Real to Real Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it's time once again to talk all things movies. Joining me, as always, is the amazing Paul Britton. And once again, we are graced with the presence of the amazing Kristen. Kristen, thanks so much for making it and what's going to be a pretty interesting discussion tonight. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad that I could bring two really interesting choices to y'all and to hear y'all's thoughts, because I feel like I could not really recommend these to two other people.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you did, because this, our main segment today, of course, with you here, we're going to be talking about two films from last year, 2022, that were two foreign films that you talked about. Hey, this is kind of often how our discussions happen when you join us. It's like, hey, these are some movies I really want to talk about, and I know, speaking for myself, and I think Paul is the same. That for me is always a good, like, yeah, let's do that, because it takes me at least down roads that I probably wouldn't have gone down. And the two movies we're going to talk about are definitely in that wheelhouse for me. So I'm appreciative of the fact that you continue to bring this kind of work to us. Paul, what about you overall?
Yeah, I mean,
these
were like, if I made a list of movies I missed from 2022 that I still wanted to see, it's not a very long list. Let's just be clear. This would have been like in the two of the top three. I don't know if it would have been 1, 2. Like, EO was number one. Like that
Really?
was number one. Yeah. EO was number one. I'd heard really good things about it. And so it was number one. And then St. Omer was either, 2 or 3, just depending on my mood and, what's going on in the world at the moment. But yeah, so I was aware of both of these movies. These were two that just did not have good play, accessibility.
Right.
Even in Chicago, like, they were pretty hard to find.
Yeah. So I am frustrated with the state of streamers in general, but I feel like the one damn thing that streamers should be able to do is make it easier for people to find quality movies that they actually want to see. Like, I don't, call me crazy, and not for an extra $7 rental fee. Again, call me crazy. It's just something has to change at some point, but we're not there yet. It's still getting sorted out. Thank God, St. Omer did make its way to Hulu finally a couple weeks ago. So
yeah,
it just did.
Yeah, it just did.
Oh my goodness! You mean I didn't have to pay for it like I did the first time?
Not have to pay for it like you did the first time. And I'm sure if we all waited for another couple weeks, EO would also make its way somewhere. So, but that's neither here nor there. Just be happy you saw it.
True. I am very happy I saw it, and very happy to talk about it.
Excellent.
So before we start, Kristen, if you would kind of walk us through that, your thought process around these two films and what it, why it was that you felt like we've got to put a light on these two movies. If you could just kind of shed light on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for EO, I wanted to see it because I can sometimes be a completionist when it comes to Oscar nominees. And it was one of the few Oscar nominees that I had not been able to see.
Right.
Also, for the longest time, it was not really available anywhere. It was like playing, I think, one theater in downtown Chicago, which, like, that's its own adventure if you want to go see a movie in downtown Chicago, like to park, to just like you get to the place and then to pay for everything, like what have you. So when I finally did get the chance to see it, like two things like really struck me. One, how the movie was so excitingly experimental that you would not expect from a movie about a donkey. Like a movie where the donkey is the protagonist, and yet it finds such creative ways to express like its feelings, express its crises that it has, its trials and tribulations that it has, like what there's one sequence in particular, like, I hope we do talk about that. Like, when it got to that sequence, I was just like, oh no, please don't let me see a hurt donkey. And then you saw its workaround was so ingenious that I was just like overjoyed that I did not have to see animals being hurt.
Yeah.
Until I saw the end of the movie. But
Yeah.
but um but also how it was able to take and have such an emotional punch to it
Yeah.
that it was able to tell so much about humanity's relation to animals, humanity's relation to each other,
Yeah.
and how much, like, through the eyes of this one animal, it is able to see so much of humanity that I was just so overwhelmed with emotion. That was the movie that after I finished it, I was like, we need to watch this immediately because I want to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for St. Omer. Oh, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
And then for St. Omer, it was a much longer, like, slow burn for me, where I watched it. It was very slow, and I was like, there's a lot of great ideas here, but I'm not sure if it was paced very, very well. And then when I watched it a second time, like, in between the two watches, like, it was kind of like a seed was planted, and I kept thinking about this movie, like, for weeks afterward. I was just thinking about its themes. I was thinking about its parallel stories, and I was thinking about a lot of things that, like, I have witnessed in talking to people who have really complicated relationships with their parents, and complication relationships with their family, and with motherhood. And watching it a second time really set in stone, like, how much this movie, like, how many layers this movie is working under, and how, like, really well it is able to express a lot of very complex ideas in very, very simple terms, and it's very
Yeah.
subtle. And I was honestly really blown away the second time I watched it for this podcast, that, like, it was really rich, and I was not expecting to come out of this, like, a second viewing really having an even stronger, like, emotional pull to it. So, like, I just can't wait to talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, we will definitely be doing that tonight. So, again, thank you for bringing these to us. And we're going to go ahead and start with our discussion on the film EO. This was Poland's entry into the international category for last year's Academy Awards. And right from the outset, this is a film that I read an article afterwards that basically the opening line was, "This is not," and I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically, EO is a movie based on an animal that's not for children, and I'm glad I read that after, because I was like, yeah, and it's one of those movies that when I watch this kind of movie and it's over, I sat there and I was like, wow, what did I just go through? you know and so as we get started with this discussion, you've already sort of picked or tagged on a couple of things that stood out to me, which is this movie has a lot to say about not just humanity's interaction with animals, but more so humanity with humanity. And I think therein lies its power, is it's able to take a character that, by all the look of it, if you would just look at this poster, you're like, oh, this is going to be a cute film, and then you watch it. So
and then you watch it.
Yeah. So it left me speechless, Paul.
Yeah, I loved everything. If this movie were 1 hour and 38 minutes long, I loved every minute of 1 hour and 37 minutes of it. And it's just absolutely beautiful. You just feel the heart that went into this movie, the absolute the humanity that went into telling this story, and the love that went into telling this story. And in general, I have a problem with, animals in peril. I just do. And the movie did a really good job of constantly bringing you to that edge of, all right, this is an animal in peril, but people are okay. Like, yes, people suck, but guess what? People are also okay. Yeah, people suck, but you know what? People are also okay. And it's just it's just a constant pull and push and pull and push and pull between people suck and people are actually okay. And I needed a happy ending in this, and you don't get one, and it's soul crushing. I did not know what to do with myself when this movie was over. I didn't cry, but only because I don't think I could feel anything. Like, I just couldn't believe how this movie ended, and that, I was going to see this movie no matter what. So, Kristen, please don't think in your head for 1 second, oh my God, I can't believe I put this movie on them. No.
Well, I know how you feel about animals being used on film. So
Right.
that's, I think, partially because I was thinking back to our Speed Racer review,
Right.
and how strongly you felt about there being a live monkey used as a character. And I honestly wondered how you would feel about a live donkey being used as a main character throughout the entire movie.
So the whole thing with chimpanzees, however, is that it's a different thing. Like, chimpanzees are the use of chimpanzees in movies is, it's really, like, it messes them up forever, and there's just no turning back for them, and they can never be put into a normal scenario again. It's just a lifelong sentence for the chimpanzee, whereas for a donkey, I mean, they do their thing. Like, horses, donkeys, cows, dogs, even dogs, cats, they do their thing. They go back to their it's just it's a different it's honestly, it's a different level of animal. It's a different level of commitment that needs to be done, a different level of training. So it's it's a whole other thing. It really is a whole other thing. Donkey's a domesticated animal. Again, chimpanzees are not.
That makes sense. I appreciate you letting me know, because I was not aware. I was not aware of those differences, and I did not know how much that would have played into our conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a horrible person. Like, I understand my hypocrisy, and my biggest hypocrisy is the way I feel towards animals, and the fact that I just cannot be a vegetarian. Like, if everything about my heart says I should be a vegetarian, but I just don't like vegetables. Like, I can't eat them.
I'm vegetarian and I don't like vegetables.
Yeah, and I wish I could pull that off. I can't. I just should. I really, really should. But it's just, I don't know. I'm weak, and I'm a hypocrite in that regard. But at the end of the story, at the end of the day, EO's an amazing movie. And if I hope people watch it. I just needed, I'm literally, there's a scene where EO is in a nice villa, I think in France. It's a little hard to tell if they're in France or Italy at that point.
Is this the one where EO, like, they're trying to feed EO and like treat EO like really, really nice?
No, that's his first sort of foster home. Okay. This is the one. No, not this. That's not his first foster home. It's his second foster home. So his first foster home, he's in like with a whole bunch of horses, and then he knocks down their statue thing, their like awards thing. He's like, nope, he's got to go. So he ends up in a home with a whole bunch of donkeys, and then the family really likes him, but then like his like mildly mentally unstable prior owner or whatever goes and finds him and like, puts the bug in him that he needs to go find her.
Yeah.
And so he runs away. This is the one where he's with the priest and
Oh.
yeah. And it's a beautiful villa. And the priest is definitely Italian. I think they ended up in France. It's hard to say exactly where they are, but they're definitely like Mediterranean, south of France, north of Italy somewhere. And it's just like, fucking EO, just stay there.
Yeah.
You're going to have a really good fucking life. Stay there. And yes, they left the gate open. That's not for you to go running out. Like, stay there. And he doesn't. And it's just like, okay, that's fine. I don't need a super happy ending, but like just like something that's not terrible. And the ending's just completely impactful, like 100% completely impactful. And yeah,
and it's a testament to the movie how much we care about this donkey, like how much we
sure.
come to like emotionally get really connected to his journey, like how much we can just like feel sad for him and how much like we feel happy for him when he meets people who treat him just treat him like a living thing.
Yeah.
And like, goodness. Yeah, this movie just does do a number though.
Yeah, it does.
A number.
It really does. And that's where, Kristen, I want you to walk us through whatever the talking points were that you were wanting us to discuss, because for myself, the difficulty I have in talking about this film is because of how impactful it was. As someone who, I'm very big into animal rescue, my entire herd that I have here, and so when I see a movie like this, I see it through that lens. And it makes I'm sitting here admiring the cinematography. I'm sitting, some of the framing that's done in this film, the scene where he's on that bridge in front of the dam.
This has no business being as beautiful as it is.
Right. Yeah. And so that was such the I don't want to call it a struggle, because it wasn't a struggle. In wanting to figure out what to talk about it. It's like, if you talk about its elements of film, there's so much to talk about. The cinematography, the everything about the way in which these actors, played these roles, but when I'm immersing myself into the experience of what the story is, and I see this gradual move and this sort of foreboding that continues to grow, like Paul said, back, to the brink and back we went so many times. It was just like, it took me a couple of days to go, what would I talk about in terms of this film beyond the biggest thing, which is the emotional impact that it had on me in an ending that was absolutely not at all what I wanted. And so I would like you to tell us, hey, what are some of the key points you'd like to discuss?
I mean, I would love to discuss it's like directorial choices.
Okay.
Like the poster is pretty like foreshadowing how much the color red, like
Sure.
It just takes over the entire screen. Like how there's different moments where it's really, I'm actually not really sure why they use the color red. I need to kind of look into this, like what the significance was for that color.
I would imagine that the last scene informs that
probably
a little bit.
Oh. Now I use the light behind me and now I feel sad. But I would love to say, like, what were parts that, because the movie is also not very straightforward. It's like very experimental in how it tells its story. Like I mentioned earlier that there's a scene where EO does get hurt. And instead of us showing a hurt donkey and having to find some cruel, probably looking way to make a donkey look hurt, they used a robot to represent represent EO being hurt, and how much like I was just floored by how creative a decision that was, because we did not need to see it. We knew exactly
what it was doing.
And that robot was able to act way better than that donkey could have ever done.
Right.
And how much I appreciated a decision like that, to take a very experimental choice and have us avoid having to see something that would just break my fucking heart. And yet it still breaks my heart because I know what it represents.
Yeah.
And finding those creative ways to tell this story. Like, were there any other scenes that y'all felt that it used a really creative way to kind of express what was going on?
Anytime that they did a really good job of changing focus from third person to first person, where the first person would be EO. I thought they did a really, really good job of splicing that together and making it obvious, and just finding really interesting uses of different camera lenses. Like, literally just like, all right, we're just going to change the lens here and that's it. And it's just like, oh, okay, I get it. I really appreciated that. I thought that was a great directorial choice.
Yeah. What about you, Sergio? Were there any that you thought like stood out for you?
You talked about the main ones, and I actually had to I rented the film. I had to rewatch the scene with the robot before it was such a moment that when it happened, it threw me off completely, because again, I'm absorbing what previously had happened still. So I had to like literally go back and go, oh, okay. And I can't even say that the word workaround came into my head, but I got it more so on the second viewing than I did on the first. And so, those were things that I wouldn't have caught in the first viewing, because I was so taken by the big things that were occurring. Like each of the major moments, and each moment of peril was just worse and worse as the movie went on, that I was just it was a roller coaster for me of emotion. And so when it came to moments like that, I didn't catch it right away. And so, were there other things that were I mean, that I thought of as creative choices? That is for me the biggest one, but I'm sad that I didn't catch that right away. I had to rewatch it because I was still processing what had happened during the scene that caused that to be the case, which was, him being so brutally attacked. And so, yeah.
And how much they used EO's eyes to like really convey what it was seeing in the world.
Right.
There's a time or two when it's just his one eye, the way the framing is done on his eye, and it's so expressive. And I think there's some creative things done with how the donkey itself was filmed to capture like his emotion through eyes. I've always had a big feeling about animals and their eyes and how they speak to you through them. And yeah, this film did a great job of capturing moments like that, to where it, this is it, I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but when I felt like there was more humanity in this donkey than in every other character portrayed, it has everything to do with how this donkey was filmed. And that's I think the genius of this movie is the way in which this well, and it was 6 donkeys that were utilized for this film. I learned, credit to the director for understanding that if you're going to tell the story, and if your protagonist is going to be EO, then you've really got you got to get creative about how you shoot the donkey.
Yeah. And I would also think, like, honestly, for like, if you are looking into getting into film too, like, there's something that we learned in film school. It was discussing how there's a type of exercise you do where you take a person with a neutral expression on their face, like a neutral expression on their face, and you then cut from that neutral expression to a baby, and then you cut back to the neutral expression, and then you shoot the neutral expression to something else, like a fancy sports car, and then you cut back to the neutral expression. The idea behind it was that, due to editing, depending on what you cut to, you then project onto that person's expression what it is that they are feeling. So if you're cutting from a person with a neutral expression to a baby, then you might project that this person has more of a nurturing look to this baby, versus if you were to take that expression and then show something, really sad, then you would assume that this person was having a more sad reaction.
Mm.
And to me, like, this movie is just all about how you're
Juxtaposing.
juxtaposing. Thank you. I was about to say juxtaposing, but I was like, that's not a word.
I would have accepted that.
Juxtapose.
Juxtaposing.
Yes. Like Eo's face and expressions and his eyes to what's happening on screen. And it's so, like, as a filmmaker, I just get so excited when I see people are able to, like, do this with film. And I think, like, if you want to get into film, if you're interested in film, especially like film editing, like, this to me is such a perfect example of like how you can use editing to create emotion in something that, like, in an animal that you would not expect to have expression like we do as humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, most definitely.
Yeah.
This was,
Let's move on. I got to move
No,
on.
we can move on. We can move on. That's fine. That's all I had to say about EO. We're fine.
Yeah.
We're gonna be fine. Are we gonna be fine?
I'm gonna cry afterwards.
Like,
Fucking yeah, I won't even begin to tell you how much I cried during this one. So, all right. Well, and the emotions continued as we then watched a movie called Saint Omer. Right off the bat, Kristen, with this one, it was I love anything, and I feel like by saying courtroom drama, I'm minimizing it. It's so much more than that, but I love anything that is, a talk heavy film. But this, when we begin into the court scenes of this movie, there's so much that stands out to me. And then again, after I read about it after the film, I was like, oh, this was all on purpose. And the first thing that stood out to me is the number of females in this courtroom. And then learning that the director, and the way she described it was accidentally, but not quite, how almost her entire film staff was women. This is a film that is, it has a purpose and goal, and it's evident right from the outset. As this movie begins to roll, and that's the first thing that stood out to me. So I wanted to start there because it's almost like, wow, I was swept in by just the initial way in which the film is presented when you start getting into the court scenes and such. So very powerful film.
Yeah, it's it's definitely a slower film and definitely takes its time. I think that was something that I was not expecting. Like, we said that it's a talky courtroom drama, but it's very cold. And I think that's what I was not expecting when I first watched it, was just how patient it was and how much, like, we are literally watching someone give a testimony in its entirety. And how much power that has, I felt like on first watch was kind of difficult to sometimes like fully pay attention to, because we're going through like literally every single minute detail of something. And then, but upon rewatch, how much those details mirror these two narratives, like how much the narrative of the writer, the main character, how much that is mirroring what we are listening and what we are hearing in this court case, which is like so much more on rewatch that hopefully y'all got to see a little bit more than I did the first time I watched it.
Yeah. And before I get to Paul, that all being very purposeful, when you then learn that this was based on the director's own experience of having attended a trial that this movie is based on, and deciding, in real life, so it was like a story told by the person who was trying to recount her experience. And so, yeah, it was a very different experience for me in watching this film. Paul, what about you? Your opening thoughts on this film?
So it's interesting. The most interesting thing about this movie is that it basically says, is using a convention. It's using the convention of a courtroom drama.
Mhm.
And there is a very clear purpose behind courtroom dramas. Or as an audience, we are trained to understand that while we're watching a courtroom drama, one of the things we're supposed to be doing is forming our own opinions. And obviously, you do that in any movie. And it's but with a courtroom drama, it's not subtle. It's very much this is your job as the audience. That's it. Like your job as the audience is to literally sit there and you're one person jury, and you get to form your own opinions, and then and then like the story plays out, and do you agree or disagree, and usually with most courtroom dramas, it's pretty like, yes, okay, this is where the director wants to take us, and this is director. With some, it's okay, the director wants to take us here, but we actually are going to go over here, or makes it a little more difficult. Like it's more problematic than something like in A Few Good Men type of situation, where in A Few
Yeah.
Good Men, it's obvious fucking Jack Nicholson needs to go to jail. Like there's just no,
Right.
with it's. I have never seen a courtroom drama where not only are you as the audience completely incapable of forming a coherent idea on what to think about this, the movie literally doesn't tell you this is kind of where we were going with this, and you get the extremely distinct impression that the people telling the story, the director, literally had no idea how they really felt about the whole thing.
Yeah.
There and I could be wrong about that, but I would be very surprised if the director, if she could come out and just say, yeah, you know what, this is a person that didn't belong in that courtroom, and was in somehow a victim of the system, or a victim of her situation, which she most certainly was to an extent. But the crime that she committed is so outside the box of victim of your circumstance, victim of the system, victim of anything, that it's you what do you do with it? Like,
Yeah.
where are you supposed to go with this? I don't know. And I do this segment, what the hell did I just watch? And like, I'm supposed to sit here and watch movies and be like, okay, I kind of know what the director was saying here, even though what they've put together is a non-narrative mess. I don't know that the director had any idea what they really wanted to say on what she really wanted to say on this. I don't know. I just genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
I personally don't know, but I just know the questions that comes up for me. And that, I mean, that's kind of partially the reason why on my initial watch of this movie, like if you're going into this with the answers, like you're not going to get answers in this movie.
Right.
But what stuck with me a lot was, oh, I'm sorry, you were
No,
saying?
no. I'll hold it. I'll hold it. Go.
But what struck me though was all the questions that I was asking myself as I was watching it, because I think of it as how, as a woman, I have struggled with the idea of being a mother. I have struggled with the concept of like the idea of caring for this human, and whether or not I could be able to do it if I feel like right now I am barely able to take care of myself, and how much, and I try to think about like how much I would feel if I was in that situation where I felt like I had no help, and yet at the same time did not have a history of good mothers like I've had
Right.
me personally in my own life. And I also think of it from the circumstance too of I've been thinking a lot about the rights of convicts, about how much her crime deals so much with the circumstance surrounding her, especially with like how many people I have met in the past 2 months. And not to mention in a lot of the people that I hold very close to me who have very difficult, complex relationships with their parents, and parents who have done terrible things and then still try to be like, you had a great childhood. What are you talking about? Nothing bad has ever happened. And how much that can eventually lead to what she felt like was what she had to do. Not saying that I say it was a good thing.
Right.
I'm just saying I'm trying to think of it from the main character's perspective of how she's about to be. I mean, it's kind of spoilery, but I feel like we can probably tell that that's just where it's going to go. That like she's about to become a mother herself, and she is now caught up in this, trying to write about this court case, and it's calling into question her experiences as a daughter to her mother, as well as like how she has fears about herself and anxieties about becoming a new mother. And like those kinds of questions are kind of what I think about a lot, and thinking about like why this movie like was cold the first time. And the more that the more that it kept thinking about it, the more that I just kept kind of weighing the different aspects of this story in my head, and kind of like how I felt about it, how like my feelings changed as I sat with all the details, how much I noticed more the second time in the performances, which are very, very subtle, especially from the woman who performed the crime, like how much she is reacting to the different testimonies around her, and just like having a lot of feelings while at the same time, like you, not having a lot of answers. And I think I'm maybe a little bit at peace kind of with there not being answers. I'm just thinking more about the questions, and the questions being interesting to me.
Yeah. No.
My thought on the point about, you know, not being able to expect answers from this movie is that the whole conceit of the trial, as stated by the woman on trial, was she doesn't know why she did what she did. She admits that she did it. She doesn't know why she did what she did, and she'd like to find out, and she's hoping that she finds out during the trial. And that right there is my biggest problem with the, like you said, the coldness, because this movie is so cold. Like, for as warm and heartfelt as EO was, this is just the exact opposite. This is very much like Stone, just we're here to have a trial, and something terrible happened, but we need to get to the end of it, because we can't just put a guilty person in jail. Like, we have to go through a trial and then put a guilty person in jail. And that's cold. Like, that's just flat cold. Like, there's no question this is a person that, I can't fathom the argument. I mean, even though the lawyer presents the argument of, this is why I don't think my client belongs in jail. Because of the mental, she just wasn't in her right mind. And that is just so questionable. Like, that, at no point do you feel like that is actually what the scenario was. The problem was, should we all go to jail for thinking horrible things at some point or another, versus the people who actually do horrible things? Yes, they should go to jail. And I think in the end, that's what the gist of the movie is for me. And when I watch it, is based off of the defense attorney's final closing statement of, we all are a bit of a monster. And we are. you know, like and that's really very much the filmmaker shining the light on ourselves. And we can all say that, yeah, I mean, I've thought about doing horrible things before, like just horrible. Not that, oh, I want to do them, but just like the image of, hey, what if I drive my car into incoming traffic, you know, right now? Like, not because I want to, but just because it's just like, why does this stupid impulse come into my head? And it's a horrific monster type impulse. If what she did with her child was an impulse, which it just clearly wasn't, you know, that's where the break is for me, you know, in the end.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to share with you guys that because I wasn't thinking straight, I actually watched this movie on Mother's Day. So I was like, and it didn't hit me till later in the day. I was like, what was I thinking? I just, you know, and I want to qualify
Why?
that. Well, you know, because Mother's Day is a very different day for me now, ever since losing my mom.
Or
But
the perfect day for this?
well, no. No, but it was just, you know, Mother's Day has sort of just become another day, you know.
Yeah.
I still remember my mom and I love her dearly, obviously. But so I'm at home, I have time, and Paul will tell you Sundays are there's at least one movie I watch per weekend, you know.
Right.
And so, but no, it wasn't until like I think it was yesterday that I was like, what was I thinking? As I was sort of contemplating my thoughts on this film. Anyway, but more importantly, I had to share that because I couldn't believe it myself. But no, I think everything the both of you have said falls right into where I land with this film. But I think that the thing that for me was so and I want to use the word powerful, but there were some things that just left me kind of feeling like there's something missing here.
Yeah.
It when I take the overall movie as a whole, I tried to spend some time kind of thinking of not just the person who was on trial, but the main character, the person who's going through this experience and is trying to find her way and has so many questions about her own ability and her own self. And, you know, I thought to myself, man, like how many of us have those struggles? And, you know, this film is so much more than just what its story is. It's how it makes us feel. It's that you know, when it ends the way it does, and we don't even know the outcome of the trial, and Rama is headed home. It's like, I think the point, at least this is what I thought. The point was that you're left thinking, and that's the point. You know, you
Right.
have to figure it out for yourself, not
Right.
because you don't know, you know, not what the trial outcome was, but what is it that this story and experience, what was it for you that it created? Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yes.
I think that's the goal.
That is the goal. I mean, you make a very conscious decision when you make a courtroom drama and don't show the outcome of the trial.
Yeah.
Like that's a big fucking decision. Like,
Absolutely.
let's not pussyfoot around that for a second. Like, that's like, holy shit.
It's
We
a
just watched a
choice.
courtroom drama. A very, I mean, you know, a very just powerful courtroom drama
Yeah.
that asks a lot of questions, answers none of them, including what was the outcome of the trial that we just spent, you know, an hour watching.
Right.
That's a choice.
Yeah. And I think therein lies the filmmaker's challenge to us as
Right.
the audience.
Exactly.
Is you're forced to make something of it. And unfortunately, I think that because of its limited scope and ability for people to see it, I feel like, man, this is a missed opportunity for these two movies.
Yeah.
I think if there's a common thread for me in this experience with having this conversation with you guys today, it's that, and we've said this often, Paul, I wish it was more accessible so that people can see it, because from a filmmaking standpoint, I enjoyed both. There's a lot of good to be said for both films.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunately, they're not films that people are drawn to in the way that so many other films, you know, a couple of which we're going to talk about, the rest of the show.
For sure.
And it's, I don't know, it makes me sad because we need to be challenged sometimes by films, and these two films for me, they made me think, and they really got into my psyche.
Flip side of that argument, neither one of these films would do very well in general audiences. I'm
No,
just saying.
true,
I
no,
don't
no
think
doubt,
so. No,
no doubt, no doubt.
These are
and there
films
is-
I don't recommend to anyone except y'all.
Right, right.
Yeah,
I can't think of a single living soul I'd be like, yeah, you need to go watch EO. I can't.
no, yeah, you're right.
I
I'm
would-
like, get the boys together. We're watching EO.
Yeah, like, hey, it's Saturday night. What do you want to do? Oh, I just saw EO. It's pretty good. I
but-
want to watch it again.
Yeah, have a
What?
date night with the girls and
Like,
watch St.
Kristen,
Omer.
I can't believe you watched EO twice. Like, that blows my mind. That
It's so
absolutely-
good.
It's so good. I will never, ever, ever put it on again, ever. I am so happy I saw it. It's
Yeah.
very, very, very high on my listing of movies I have seen once that I will never watch again under any circumstances.
Yeah, but Criterion's coming out with a release later this year.
Okay, I'm so happy for Criterion, and I hope more people get to see it. I will never watch it again. And that me saying I will never watch a movie again is not automatically an assumption I didn't like the movie.
Yeah,
It's a fantastic, amazing movie. If it had just any ending other than the ending it had, it would have made my top 10 for the year. Easy.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Just
It would be a 10 out of 10 if it did have a happy ending.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But also it wouldn't have the impact if it had a happy ending either.
Very
So,
true.
Go figure.
yeah. No,
you know?
absolutely. That
It's a double-edged sword.
I wonder how much, and this is obviously we'll never know, but I wonder how much thought went into that by the director of like, do I
he's
go
a
what
legend, so he can do whatever the hell he wants.
That's true. This is true. This is true. So, all right. Well, Kristen, as always, you bring us the most wonderful stuff, and so thank you so much for
sure.
bringing these two films for us to discuss.
For sure.
They made me think. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much for being open-minded to them.
Yeah.
To being open-minded to two completely different experiences and the things that they brought up. I appreciate it because I know they're not easy. Neither one are easy movies.
Right.
No.
Well, I can't think of a better person to have these kind of discussions with, Kristen. You're always such a great part of this experience. So thank you, as always, for making time for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. All right.
Yay.
Well, we'll look forward to next time. And once again, a big thank you to Kristen for joining us once again. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks again,
Hopefully
Kristen.
very soon.
All righty.
Right.
Have a good night.
Yay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I didn't want to ask, do you think that means she's going to watch Fast 10?
We may stop it. You're hilarious. Oh man. Oh, it's always such a great time hearing,
sure.
and not only that, but I learned so much in terms about how to view films when I hear both of you talk, and so it's a lot of fun. So I'm glad we had that experience for this episode.
Okay.
We do, however, have some work to do. You
let's-
have a very interesting segment piece that you're about to do here as we get to this week's What the Hell Did I Just Watch? So let me go ahead and bring that up for you. And
lots of subtitles for Paul. This
I would
lots of subtitles.
talk about that.
So this one's been sitting in my HBO Max queue for a while now, and this is one of the most interesting movies I've had, that just from the standpoint of it literally is two completely different movies. On the one hand, you have a faux documentary and a mockumentary. The mockumentary, very, very much in the style of the Christopher Guest movies, Waiting for Guffman, Breaking Wind, not Breaking Wind. What is it called? Best in Show and the A Mighty Wind.
A Mighty Wind.
Very much in the style of those where it's clearly supposed to be funny. The people being the main, the character being having a documentary made about himself is clearly not entirely right, even given the weird circumstances that they live their lives. Even on top of that, it's just like, it's an interesting, weird person.
Yeah.
And there are some genuinely hilarious scenes. For example, so the mockumentary is being made about a guy, a thug, like a criminal. He literally just goes around he's a serial killer. He steals from people and kills them. And he's a terrible person. Like, and there's this one scene where he is being hunted by a rival thug, and the rival thug finds his hideout. Okay. And like, so they're chasing each other through this hideout. He eventually gets the drop on him and kills him. And then all of a sudden you find out that he also has a documentary crew following him.
Oh,
and so like,
wow.
he has his documentary crew kill the other documentary crew. It's a genuinely funny, horrifically fun. Like, this movie is so dark in its comedy that but then the parts that aren't funny are overly gruesome. I mean, there are things that are just like, there are just some things that this person does that are just, it's like, it's really interesting, because this could have been like an all-time top 10 mockumentary movie ever for everything.
Yeah.
But the serious parts are so seriously unwatchable, like, just terrible. Like, what is going on here? Like, oh my God, I was just laughing 5 minutes ago and now I'm watching this. It's done for a reason, by the way. Like, it is obvious that the filmmaker wants you to feel horrible about the fact that you were just laughing about this guy, scaring a woman to death. And then when asked about what happened, why, because he so loves shooting people, like, or strangling them. Like, those are the two things he likes to do. He's like, oh, I saw on the table that she was taking heart medicine. I figure why not just end it this way?
Oh, geez.
And it's just like,
wow.
I mean, that's dark, and that's really fucking dark and funny. And then he goes and does like terrible things that, like, beyond that is terrible. But then, like, this movie is the best thing to ever make you feel terrible for laughing at things. I've never felt more terrible for laughing at things that were meant to be funny in my entire life. It's just, it's really interesting. It's on HBO Max. I definitely recommend it if you have a horribly dark sense of humor.
Well, I have been known to, yes. So sounds interesting.
But you have to know, there are things in this movie that are unspeakably terrible. Unspeakably terrible. I can't even tell you. Let's just say he has a horrible way of celebrating Christmas, and it's just it's
wow.
fucking grim. It's absolutely grim.
Yeah.
I can't. It's just
It's anytime a mockumentary type film can make you react in any way.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But when I think about what you're saying, and I'm like, wow, this is about, this whole notion of, like, you find yourself laughing and you're kind of deeply ashamed by the fact that that you did.
Yeah,
that's effective. I mean, it's
super effective. It is absolutely super effective.
That's all. Yeah. Well, there you go. Man Bites Dog. I don't know why. Well, I know why. Natural Born Killers comes to mind
for sure. But
was this a precursor to that film in terms of timing?
What year was Natural Born Killers? Because this was like 92 or 94.
This is 92. Let's see. I can see what that is right now. That was 1994. Okay. Just after. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder who you felt did it better.
Interesting. Another question for another time. I can't think on my top of my head. It really is a different kind of, like, I never have watched Natural Born Killers and particularly thought, oh, this is really funny.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
that's a whole different kind of ride. So
yeah.
All right. Well, week to week, you can find out what kind of stuff Paul is watching.
Yep.
And Paul, as always, thank you for what you bring. It's never a dull moment. So, all right. That brings us to this week's installment of Cinema by Jen. And we are going to talk briefly about a film called Zootopia.
Yeah.
It's funny. Some of the movies on this list, Paul, that Jen's given me, I literally can't remember when they came out. I know Zootopia has been there, but it just never resonated with me because when it came out, I was like, okay, not for me. This is a funny movie.
I know.
The number one, the voice cast across the board is fantastic.
Yes.
There's something though about Jason Bateman that when you think about his career span and the work he's done in the recent years with like Ozark and such, I listened to his podcast, and he's just the way he can portray this character of the fox. I forget the fox's name. I don't know if you've ever noticed or how many times you've seen this. If you noticed that he plays every single line in this movie at the very same level, in that like very like flat Jason Bateman way
until. And this is the beauty of it until not the very end, because there's like sort of like a coda.
Yeah.
But until the emotional climax of the movie where he is clearly hurt.
Right. Yeah. But and I say all that to say that it's amazing how this voice cast, especially him, if I didn't know who they were, I'd be looking them up. Like, who was that? Because everything about the animation and so forth, that's a given, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to sit there and be wowed by this because you're so used to seeing this kind of animation, excellence from Disney.
Right.
But when I listen to the characters and how they're portrayed, this is one of the more the word that kept coming up in my mind was like, this is like a very subtle performance by all of these folks. Because they're just portraying animals living day to day like humans would. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's why I found it enjoyable, because it wasn't over the top. It wasn't anything that was so like, that's what animation sometimes for me is a struggle, because it's like, okay, I don't need these big bright colors and all these big, there was something about this movie that I was like, man, it was fun. It was a very well told story, and the voice cast just hit it out of the park. And I loved it. It's
good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Again, another one that I was ashamed I waited so long.
It's just good. Good Disney is great.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
It's a good, for me, it's one, I'll probably watch it again. Like
sure.
It's great on, I'm sure it's going to be great on our rewatch. So yeah, a whole lot of fun.
This movie has the greatest, just pause the scene and look at the movie titles moment. And when they first find Duke Weaselton, by the way, this movie was the movie after Frozen, and the guy who does the voice, have you seen Frozen?
No, I have not.
Okay. There's a bad guy in Frozen who is voiced by the guy who he voices the two characters.
Yeah.
And in Frozen, he plays a bad guy, the Duke of Weselton. And in this movie, he is Duke Weaselton. And like at the end of Frozen, they're like, you must leave, sir, and go back to Weaselton. And he's like, it's Weselton. And so, and in this movie, they're like, all right, Mr. Weselton. And he's like, it's Weaselton. And it's really funny.
What a great callback.
But then awesome. One of the things that this guy does is he sells like bootlegged movies. And if you look at the movies, they're all like animal versions of Disney movies. And
okay.
So it's interesting.
Well, now I got to go back and see that.
Yeah, you just pause it on the when they show the thing. The sloths in the DMV.
Oh my God.
Come on.
I have never laughed so hard. I mean, it's such a simple premise, but man, they milked it perfectly.
And so they milk it.
Oh man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That I think is what was so cool about the entire experience, was how they they took every sort of aspect of human life and they made it.
Right.
They justified it with who they chose the animals to be in that regard.
And
so.
the best part is they play up the whole thing. Why are animals wearing clothes? And then they have a segment of the animals that don't wear clothes because it's not natural for animals to wear clothes. I love that. I love
Fantastic.
it. Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. So another win by Jen. I'm sold on Zootopia. So
excellent.
We'll look forward to next week's segment. And Paul, it's going to be But I'm a Cheerleader. So
okay,
that will be next week's film. All right, we do have a couple of quick, a couple of reviews. One that we needed to do from last week, and that is to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Sure.
I have a feeling we're going to land on two very different sides of the coin.
I assume so, only because you didn't like the first one, which is the most puzzling take on movies that you have for me.
On the first Guardians film? Yeah, first two.
So I don't understand, like the second one I'm like, okay, whatever, but the first one is literally my favorite Marvel movie. And like, so for it to be one of your least favorite of the original, phase 1 through 3, is, I don't get it. And it should be one of your favorites because you love silly action movies, like literally silly action movies. And it's the quintessential silly action movie. And this movie takes the premise of silly action movie and says, okay, but what if we made you like have trauma?
Right. And so here's the thing. I since we last talked about this, however long it was, I think I figured out that the reason why the first one didn't really land for me was because of all of the previous films in the series. The tone was pretty consistent across most of them.
Okay.
To where when you get to Guardians, it's like so out there.
It's totally different.
It's hilarious because by the time you get to Thor Ragnarok, it's like so out there, so
right.
And why I like one over the other, who knows? But so going into Volume 3, I'm expecting another one of these comedic romps, and I'm like, what is happening?
Nope.
Man, you want to talk about sucking the air out of the room?
Yeah.
This is actually a pretty good film. So
good.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing. My summation of this movie is it cashes in all of the goodwill it developed in the first two movies, in the humor, and just says, you are going to laugh at things in this movie only because we have already trained you to do so. But because you like these characters, you're going to go on this traumatic journey with us.
Right.
And it does that.
And that's where, for me, there's sort of a 2-level feeling I have about this film.
Okay.
Because and the first part is what I just said. It's like you have to know that most people are going to go in and they're not going to get what they're expecting. It's the first time I felt like these films have given me sort of a hook to really be emotionally invested in, because I'm all good with like stuff being played for laughs. Okay, fine. But this one really made you work hard to enjoy the experience and deal with some of the tough stuff that you saw on screen. Rocket's backstory, heartbreaking. Right. Just the overall nature of the conflict that they're in. And the other part of my thinking is kind of funny. It was affected by what I have talked to you over and over again about Phase 4 and now 5, that this constant need to introduce new characters, looking forward to something, it just doesn't do anything for me anymore. Okay. Like Adam Warlock, okay, great. The new team, okay. Like, I don't know. It was sort of a tale of two feelings with this movie. I don't deny it was a good movie, but when it was over, I'm like, okay, how do I feel about the fact that this is going to be a whole new Guardians thing? I don't.
You don't feel.
So it's like, I'm okay with closing the door on this one for now.
Right.
You know, so
And I do think that it ends. You know, this isn't one of those things where it's like, oh, what's going to happen? We know exactly what's going to happen. James
right,
Gunn's going to go off and he's going to run the DCU, and
yeah,
it's either going to work and good for him, and you know he's going to be there forever, or a la Kevin Feige,
mhm,
or it's not going to work, but we're not going to know that for another 5 to 8 years,
right,
and so he'll come back and do another one in 5 to 8 years. That's it.
yeah,
You know, there's no, there, you know, there isn't a middle ground where he's doing well in the DCU or it's doing okay at the DCU and they keep him on board and he just comes back in 3 years anyways to do. This movie is not possible again in 3 years. We're
right,
not, you know, or 4 years or even 5 years. It's going to
sure,
be the earliest we would get another standalone Guardians movie with James Gunn. So, i.e., you know, the heart of the movie is 8 years. You know,
yeah,
that's the absolute earliest. And guess what? It's not going to happen.
right,
It's not going to happen. So, you know, the way we see these characters again is going to be very, very different.
sure,
And
yeah,
and I think that they did that. I think they closed that off because of that. I think they closed it off successfully. I do.
gotcha.
I
No,
really
that
do.
makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, it hits all the right buttons in terms
Yep.
of action, and you
Yep.
know, but I think you put it perfectly. You're made to pay a price this time around.
Yeah.
So
You're not getting it free this time. kids.
not at all. Any other thoughts you have, Paul, on this film that you
Thank
want
God
to
they
share?
didn't kill a fucking donkey at the end of this movie.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my goodness. But you know, isn't it something though that we kind of had? You know, there were similar moments. You know,
Yes.
that
Yes. Yes.
I'm just glad that
Yes.
this. I'm glad we weren't watching this all in the same weekend.
I know.
So
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good point. Oh my God.
yeah,
Imagine if I'd watched EO and then it was like, all right, I got to go watch Guardians of the Galaxy now.
it's
Oh, I
tough,
would not have been
man.
able to do that.
Yeah. Whew, we're
Where
putting
are you
ourselves
on
to
the
the ringer,
tacos?
man. All right. Well, so from a taco standpoint,
Yeah.
Paul, let me go ahead and get those
You
ready.
do it. Yeah.
Where would you land on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume
Me, I'm
3?
4 plus guac.
All right.
It's almost 5. It's almost 5. I genuinely loved this movie. But here's the reality is that the first one is 5 for me. The second one is 4 for me.
Okay.
This is 4 plus guac. I mean,
Gotcha.
it's better than the second one, not quite the first one. In other universes, it might actually be 5, but you know,
Gotcha.
for right now, I'm just gonna do 4 plus guac.
That's about where the Marvel movies are kind of landing here recently. Is you know it's almost like they're on autopilot for some of them, but I'm going to go with 4. You know, it's a strong 4. It does what it wants to do. It does it well. And again, of the 3, this is probably the one that I'll go back to sooner, simply because I liked being made to pay the price to enjoy the story, and you know, I don't know, maybe I'm just a you know, glutton for punishment, but
Yep.
All right, you sir watched
Yes.
a movie called Hypnotic
Yes.
by one of my favorite directors, Robert Rodriguez, and
Right.
I don't want to. Let me just say that I'm a little disappointed at the box office, but
you and everybody associated with the movie. Here's the thing: is it's earned its box office. Look, I love Ben Affleck, and I loved the conceit of this movie.
yeah,
This is another case where I think that the movie should have been what it was originally presented as.
okay,
And this is, well, actually this is slightly different. So we'll rewind to whatchamacallit, the actually no, it works perfectly with this Polite Society from a few weeks ago, where it's my whole problem with Polite Society was it's a story of these two sisters slightly growing apart, but you know, because one of the sisters has a hard time, you know, has decided that she just needs to grow up, and that kind of breaks their relationship apart until she realizes, you know what, fuck that, I don't need to grow up. Although in the fuck that I don't need to grow up, they also decided to throw in that the mother wanted to, the future stepmother wanted to clone herself into the woman, which is absurd and stupid and didn't need to be in the movie.
Right.
And so this one has a similar tract where it starts where there's a guy who can hypnotize people just through look and just through mannerism
Mm.
and get them to do what he wants them to do. And is robbing banks, and in doing that, and we kind of find out that he was part of a program and blah 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 blah. And okay, I'm in, and then it takes a left turn at some point, and I don't know if I just wanted it to keep going straight or if I wish it had stayed on the left turn the whole time. I don't but it's jarring.
Mm.
The turn is jarring, and movies, no, stop it. You can be a thing. You're allowed. I give you permission.
This feels like judging from the trailer only, this feels like a big departure for Robert Rodriguez in terms of what we're used to from him.
I mean, I'd have to go look at his filmography to be like, actually, it's kind of like blah, only not successful, because usually his stuff is successful. And by successful, I don't mean, monetarily, just successful in that it works.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking Desperado. We're talking about,
right.
Oh gosh.
But Desperado was such,
and
I mean,
so early on,
Sin City is so freaking good,
right? Like there's such a, but this
Once Upon a Time, I mean, like he has so many movies that work on such an interesting level.
Yeah.
El Mariachi, that's the one I was thinking of. That, I mean, he has, it definitely is its own thing.
Yeah.
And
it's very different. I mean, what is it? Oh man, the vampire one. Why can't I think of the title?
From Dusk Till Dawn.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Predators. That was another one. I think that's the first one I didn't expect to ever see from Robert Rodriguez, movie, in the Predator franchise. But anyway, yeah. So from a rating standpoint, Paul, for Hypnotic, where would you land?
I loved the first act so much.
Okay.
I really loved the first act. I'm gonna go 2+ guac. I'm giving it if you like Robert Rodriguez and you like Ben Affleck, there's enough here to keep you on board. Gotcha. But at the end, you will definitely be like, oh.
What the hell did I just find?
No,
I know.
No, you won't be that. You will definitely be like, oh.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to catch it.
There is so much potential here on every level, and it's just unfulfilled.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that makes sense. I've not missed one of his films yet, so at some point I got to catch up on that one.
There you go.
All right. Well, once again, we have journeyed through quite a few films, and some very different from the others, and and here we are on the doorstep of Fast 10. So, which, did you know it was going to be part 1?
I'm very disappointed to hear that. Confirmed.
Are you sure?
I heard everything I understand is this movie cost $300 million to make.
Holy cow! Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And this isn't the type of thing where they're ready to start filming additional ones. If this does, like, this has to do really well.
Okay, gotcha.
And they'll go ahead and. I hope, God, I hope it. I don't want to go see it just on the off chance that it's my ticket that pushes it over the edge, So, but we're going. I understand.
Yeah. What else is opening? Goodness gracious! It's like
on Hulu, the White Men Can't Jump remake,
which we don't need, but yeah, I'm looking at this coming. Let's see. There really isn't.
There's Master Gardener, but I don't. So I would so much rather go see Master Gardener, but I don't even know if it's opening in my neighborhood. Like, I wonder. Oh my God, is it?
Yeah, I can tell you
Paul
straight
Schrader.
up. It's
Paul Schrader, the guy who did has done movies that you and I have both liked before, but most recently the one with Oscar Isaac, the card
counter.
Yeah.
I don't have that one in my area, so I guess Fast 10 it is.
Yeah.
Want to do a speed review of the first 9? I'm just kidding.
Yes, that's our conceit. We're just going to go through each one and be like, did it work on any level? Yes or no? And where are you on it?
What did we do last time?
I'm sure we did something like that where we looked at all of them, and we'll just do it again and then I'll spend 5 minutes talking about how Fast 5 was a really good movie and why couldn't we just go?
Oh, that's right. I do remember now. Yeah. Okay.
It's
coming back. That's funny.
Yeah.
We'll find a creative way to do it.
All right.
Unlikely.
Well, they haven't found a creative way to make these movies in a few years.
This is true. So, Jason Momoa's turn to be a villain and then turn good. So,
you know what would be fun is if we neither one of us revisit any of the Fast movies and we try to see if we can remember what the.
I don't plan to. Yeah, no, I'm going in without.
That's our creative. Yeah. Can we actually remember what any of the other Fast movies were?
Where we were left off. Yeah, I like that. All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, whatever it turns out to be, I'm looking forward to next week's conversation, Paul. So thank you as always for all you do. To all of you out there, we thank you so much for being with us. And if you are watching this on YouTube after the fact, don't forget to click that subscribe button and also the notification bell so you know when episodes land. And as always, we thank you so much for being part of the Real to Real Talk family. On behalf of Paul, thank you. And remember, you are awesome. You're amazing. And the world's a better place because you are in it. We'll see you next week on Real to Real Talk.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.